Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. You saw a clip at the top of the show for our first movie this week, which is 63 Up. And this is where Michael Apted revisits the same group of Brits every 7 years since 1964. So they are 63 years old now, and we follow along with the lives of Tony, Neil, Nick, Simon, Bruce, Jackie, Sue, and the rest of the gang. And of course, this started as a social experiment in the 60s, really to look at the class system in England. That was the original experiment, to take some folks from a working class background and some folks from an upper crust background, and then to see what would happen to them and follow them along their lives. But it's become much more than that. It's really become the tapestry of a human life on film, one of the great social experiments of our time, I'd say. And, so this is, it's sort of a, either you like the series or you don't type of thing. It's not like you're going to pan this one compared to 56 Up. I mean, we're vested at this point in these characters. I can't, every 7 years, you and I look forward to finding out. What's going to happen to them. I would say, now that they're getting older, you're starting to have more experiences, just as you would expect, that they're in their 60s, so they're dealing with things like loss in their lives, their parents' loss, their own health issues, getting close to retirement, worrying about their kids, all these types of things.
Yeah, all the real grown-up stuff is now happening, and all those things, as we've grown along with them, even though they're older than us, obviously, we're starting to see those certain points in lives of 35, I think, is when everyone was getting divorces around that age in there. But
21, everyone was just sullen and spitting at the camera.
21 and 14, it was the really interesting ones, because some of them had the teenage rebellion years, either a little late or it's kind of a little early.
Right.
But it goes like, it used to be Star Wars movies I look forward to, the Marvel movies now I look forward to, and then it was Terrence Malick movies, and then there's always this series. And about a year ago, I did the math in my little tiny brain, and I think I texted you and went, oh, this is the year. This is the year. It's supposed to be like in November. We're going to have the Up series. It's going to happen. And of course, it takes a little while for films to get to us here in Salem. But a lot of these films, they're available on streaming. It is provided by BritBox. However you got to see them, it makes for a wonderful series, especially if you've never seen any of these and you're like streaming and you like to knock a whole bunch of things out. Well, here's a good, fun way. We did it last time for 56 and got together for a whole weekend and watched all of them. And this time we just watched 56 Up, which I was a little surprised, and I still love every one of them. But 56, when we watched it again this last time, it seemed to be more about the filming and about being on film. This one I really loved because of the changing times, where the women said, Michael, when I watch all of them, you ask us about motherhood and sex, and then you ask the boys about politics. And when she said that, I was like, Rolodex in my head went, oh my gosh, that's right. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, last time I really let into you. And then they flash back and they show her just going off on him. I was like, yeah, oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah. And then he still didn't, did he?
Yeah, and then he proceeded to ask all the men in the series about Brexit and not ask a single woman a question about Brexit. He's like,
so if
our friend Kara was like, he learned nothing.
I wish that would have happened, because we were wondering if Brexit would still, because it depends on when they're going to be filming this, what they thought about that. And so that, of course, that's very big in terms of world news. And so I really appreciate that. And of course, there is always the honesty with a lot of them. Some drop out, some major health things have happened. There was some big surprises. There was some, I'm not going to spoil anything, but we knew something had happened. And so you watch the movie, and as they're, kind of on the edge of my seat to see who or what had happened. And it's just a spectacular series. It really is.
Yeah, and it's always fun. And I'm glad most of the folks, there's always people that have dropped off, but for the most part, the majority have stayed with it, which is kind of a testament to them, because they don't really have to. Sure. And it's hard, I'm sure, to see yourself on film that way and to divulge a lot of your personal life, including your demons. Tony, in particular, has been the guy who always wears his heart on his sleeve, and all of his flaws and everything about him he puts right out there, and that's not always an easy thing to do. That's just his personality.
There were some gasps in the audience. People who are there saw us in the small theater here in our independent theater. It was a hardcore group, obviously, and so there was a lot of gasping, or there was some praising, and there was some oh yay, and so it was nice to have that experience, a nice communal experience, as independent film can always do. But with something like this, there was a lot of a lot of love for the series.
Yeah, I think Murray might have mentioned something like, "Oh, it's almost like they're like family now, or distant friend, people that you want to follow along and see what their journey is." So so definitely I highly recommend that one.
Oh yeah.
So we'll move on to our next movie, which we have a clip for. It's A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Okay, you saw a clip for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and we are catching up on 2019 acclaimed movies that Brian and I, for whatever reason, didn't review when they first came out, and so we're catching up on those now for the rest of this episode. And this one I actually saw in the theater, and I raved about it to Brian, and then he said, oh, okay, fine, I'll see it. So we're going to review this one. And this is based on the true story of a reporter assigned to do an article on Fred Rogers, and the movie was directed by Marielle, who I think is becoming a really promising filmmaker. I'm really looking forward to what she continues to do in her career. The character of Lloyd Vogel, the journalist, is played by Matthew Rice, an actor I wasn't super familiar with. I think he's done a lot of TV, and I thought he's quite good in this movie. Yeah, and Tom Hanks, of course, plays Mr. Rogers. Now, what I thought this movie did really well, and what took me aback, because I had seen the documentary about Fred Rogers, and I kind of thought, well, what else is there to say? He's Fred Rogers, and he's a very, very nice man, and did a wonderful children's show, and what more are we going to learn? Yeah. But it turns that on its head. To me, what it did was kind of explore the impact, the messages, the morals of Fred Rogers through this very cynical character, and how, you know, people have a lot of baggage, and what it can take to kind of let go of that in their lives. So I'm really curious what you think of this movie.
Did you watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when you were a kid?
Yeah.
So I did, and I always found it sweet, nice, slow, a little boring. And so we made the movie. I found it sweet, nice, slow, and a little boring. My first problem with this movie, because I can't recommend it, is the main actor. No, the main actor I thought I'm like, who is this guy and why is he in here? And he can't hold a candle. I just didn't find him very convincing. I didn't get into that character whatsoever. And when you sit there and go, you know, Edward Norton would have been really good in this role. I would like to see Edward. When you start recasting a movie, that's not a good sign.
Oh, I thought he was really good.
And then you see Tom Hanks talking like Mr. Rogers. Wouldn't that be nice? And I was like, oh boy, we're 2 doors down from Forrest Gump. And I didn't find it very compelling at all. And for him to go, take a moment of silence, and everyone in the theater everyone in the restaurant takes a moment. I really found it corny. And I
You really missed the boat on this one.
Now, I did not want to see this movie. I dragged my feet. I saw it, not at the last minute. I saw it last week, even though we knew we were going to be seeing this movie for some time. And I sat down, cut out some time, sat down, gave it my full attention, and sat and watched it, and was just like, Tom Hanks just is now playing real life people, and this is not a challenge for him whatsoever. I really found it kind of beneath him, and then we focused on another character, that the actor who was not very good, and yes, he had anger issues. Sure.
Oh, I thought he was really good. I thought he was very convincing as a journalist.
And so Tom Hanks gets nominated for because he's Tom Hanks, and he didn't get nominated, which I thought was telling.
No, he didn't, but I thought he was really good. I thought he was very convincing as a journalist. He reminded me of a lot of journalists.
Oh, that was the other thing. I was thinking, Angela's going to like this, because it's about a journalist.
Yeah, but when they're inaccurate, I don't like them. And it was very accurate. And the thing is, I think you're really missing it. It was just really, it's kind of like a moral fable played out. I mean, you could see Eric Romer making a movie like this or something. It's a moral fable played out through these characters.
Would you seriously talk to somebody who had a puppet on their hand and go, do you want to talk to the puppet?
If it's Mr. Rogers.
No. I was like, oh, Lord. First of all, that sock puppet looks like it's been around way too long.
It had been, too.
Yeah, and it probably smelled.
Well, he's very cynical at the beginning, and he is completely convinced that he's going to be able to dig up some dirt on Mr. Rogers.
And he did a lot of I didn't see that. I didn't really feel it.
What do you mean? He spent hours with him.
Just hanging with him and talking with him, and they talked about him and his problems that you have.
Okay, well, you really missed the boat on this.
It did nothing for me. I really tried leaning into it, but it was just like,
maybe you missed in the theatrical experience. People just really got into it. So
well,
I
this
found
is the thing with the documentary, and people are like, "That's the best documentary I've ever seen." I'm like, "Wow, really?"
Maybe you just aren't you're just too cynical to love Mr. Rogers.
Well, when I watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the part that I liked about it was the puppets, not because of the puppets and the singing and Mrs. It was the architecture and the set. I was like, "Wow, what a cool set! I wanted to play on that set." And that was it. And I liked the trolley. Ding, ding. And that was it.
Which they did use that to great effect in this film, I thought. But anyway.
Sure.
Okay.
So, speaking of great documentaries, we're going to move on to our next segment. By the way, if you want to see more of our banter, you can always click on that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, or hit the little bell, and you'll get notifications every time we load up a new episode. That's what I do, is to remind myself to watch the show to see if, I grew any hair. So let's take a look at a clip for a documentary named For Sama. Okay, so as you can see from that clip, this is a very powerful film. This is an intimate and epic journey of war from the young mother's perspective. This is directed by, and I apologize because I'm going to butcher names here, Edward Watts. Oh, no, that's not the one. It's Waad Al-Kateab. And she's actually also in the documentary. It's about her finding a husband as well as becoming pregnant and then raising their child in Syria while there's horrific bombings from Russia and there's revolutionaries in the street. This is something that, you know, sometimes when you see in the news, they'll show bombings and they'll show some people. This is actually kind of follows one of those people. And this really puts a face on the effects of war and destruction. And it is absolutely a powerful and amazing film. There are scenes in this film where I wanted to look away. Because we see a lot of death and we see a lot of destruction. We see an emergency cesarean section, which I thought, we're going to show the whole thing. We're showing the whole thing. And I really, not the best time to watch during lunch. But I sat and watched this film and was just like, if certain things are going to happen, I don't know if I can continue watching this movie or if I can,
Really
venture
hard.
on.
Yeah.
It's really tough, but I mean it in the best way possible.
No,
This
people-
really shows the journey and that people have, and other people struggling, saying, this is happening. Should we move? Should we leave? No, we should stay. Is this a bad example if we leave and run, or should we be
Right.
here and staying? And then we see, well, all of these things are happening in between all of these horrific things where people still have a life and people find love and people get married and people have a child and people get pregnant. And it was just, I mean, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's been a lot of movies about, especially documentaries about Syria in the last few years, for good reason. It's an atrocity what's going on over there. And this, to me, was one of the more powerful ones I'd seen, in particular because it is from that first person perspective. It's like her own home journal really done through
Oh, yeah.
film. I mean, she's chronicling as it's happening to her,
Yeah.
but also because she's a woman, she's a mother, and she's holding this very cute, by the way, she's holding this young baby, you know, whose life she literally holds in her hands while she's trapped in this city while they're being bombed every single day. And, you know, and her husband is running this hospital. And so she's also getting that perspective of the different people coming in through the hospital, which she also documents.
What these people are doing is so brave.
It's amazing. And you know, quite a few times they think about trying to leave early on, but they feel very strongly in the cause of what they're trying to fight for in the Civil War, for, you know, for freedom, and they pay the price for that ultimately. You know, I mean, it's still continuing today, and I think the filmmaker, she's been continuing to advocate for, hey, we're still here, this is still going on in Syria. So,
You know, but the thing that I really loved about this is that we do have these really hard to watch scenes, and then they'll cut for the next scene, and it just starts on the baby's face, and she's talking to the baby, and then the baby's eyes slowly open up, and the baby giggles, and we have the beautiful, just amazing moment. It snows there. I had no idea. I was like, really? It's cold enough to snow? I never thought about it, because whenever you see pictures there, you know, it's always the most horrific thing. And there were mornings, look how snow and look how beautiful it is, and they're kind of walking out there, and so you do have those moments of like, oh, there's still
Yeah.
life happening
well, and it
here,
also
even
makes
though
you
it's just
appreciate
scary.
life more with all that
Exactly.
death, you know, with having the baby.
Just
I think,
beautiful.
you know, yeah. So it's a really powerful movie. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary. Didn't win, unfortunately. I thought
Do
this
you
one
remember
should
who
have been
won?
a strong contender.
I don't
American
remember which one
Factory.
won.
American
American Factory, there you go.
Which was very
Ooh.
good, but I think this one
Yeah,
is a
this is a better
stronger
film.
film.
No,
Yeah,
this
I
is
think
a better
this is the
film.
one that's going to be sticking with you for a while. So definitely
Yeah.
highly recommend 4 stars.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 4 stars, easy. Okay, so then we'll move on to our next film, which is Ash is Purest White. I don't know why it's hard for me to say, but it's English. Actually, it's not an English film. This is a foreign film. And it's about a man and a woman in a relationship who are also in a gang and then find they are separated once they're both incarcerated. We mainly follow the character played by the actress Teo Zhao, and I'm going to butcher the names as well, who's absolutely fantastic in this role. And we see her, she serves her time and then goes back to find her man, played by the actor Fan Liao. Also an amazing performance. And we get to see their relationship as she, I don't want to give anything too much away, but things have changed since when she gets out of prison. And we kind of follow her along, and there we see him coming, their lives intertwine, is what I should say. A beautiful film. And, you know, sometimes we say that an awful lot because we see, you know, we try to look out for really amazing films and art films, but it's a really beautiful looking film.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many times out there,
Some great
even when he's out there and
scenery.
he's showing you how to shoot a gun, which is not something I would necessarily find romantic, but it was really romantic and beautiful the way this was done. And as we going along and watching the film, I just really grew closer and closer to these characters, and I really cared. I won't talk about the ending, whether it was something I agreed with or wanted to see or didn't want to see, but it certainly left me, you know, with great emotion.
And this director is quite the force in China. He's one of the leading auteurs in China. Has done films such as A Touch of Sin, Still Life, Mountains Made to Part, all films that did very well on the international circuit. You know, it's funny that with the description on this, when you look at something like IMDb, it describes it like as a gangster epic, which I think people will think it's a little misleading. They'll think of Irishman or even The Godfather. Like these are sort of more, how should we say? They're not flashy gangsters. I don't even know. I would call them more like underworld members. I mean, she's living in kind of not the greatest, you know, house, and you know, these are not wealthy people. These are not, you know, Scarface type gangsters.
They're not leaders
here.
of the gang.
No, I mean they're kind of they're operating some kind of like underworld gambling parlors and some different things in their community, but they're definitely not on the. They're not like high society type people, and so that it also makes their situation very precarious. They don't have a lot of finances to fall back on when things go wrong. One of the things that he does really beautifully, which I think is very difficult to do, is he manages to intersect these very personal stories of their romance and their relationship with something very political, which is the changing face of China. Like when she gets out of prison, she is faced with a society that looks very different, you know, and of course the famous dam project. She literally sees an entire country transformed that doesn't even look the same as when she was first went in, and how that kind of affects her.
And that's the backdrop to a love story, which is really, you know, that's not
really
easy to do
interesting.
when you'd be able to put something tragic.
No, but it's really
around it.
effortless. I thought it really worked.
Yeah. James Cameron can do it, like with Titanic.
Not exactly.
I know that's
the same.
exactly the example you were looking at for. But yeah, I mean, I really just grew to. I loved her performance, and it's a 16-year time frame in this film, which is a little hard to kind of understand a little bit because of my lack of knowledge of their history. But yeah, it's just a fantastic performance,
she's
just
amazing.
captivating all the way without being over. I mean, there could have easily been, if this had been an American Hollywood film, there'd have been big, huge speeches and big tears of da 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 da. This one does not do that. It's very much.
Well, in the scene where
matter of
she
fact.
quote unquote kind of saves her man, I don't know if you could put it that way, but that's a pretty powerful. That's the way it all comes about is very interesting. And the actress, she's been in almost all of his films. She's the director's wife. She is given such a tour de force performance here. So much to work with. It makes you feel. You feel bad for Hollywood actresses who have so little to work with in the screenplays they're given. They're just told, and you see a role like this where a woman is given a full range character. She's sometimes unlikable, sometimes not, but she's given a fully developed character to play over a 2.5-hour period, and it's pretty amazing. So, and the cinematography is amazing.
And she gets to age. She's still gorgeous when she starts. That adds to the performance, but she's beautiful. And even when she's, you know, she plays the young and plays the young very well, and then she plays 16 years later and still is able to act that. I felt like that.
She's got a steeliness to her character that I don't think we see a lot in, you know, female roles without, or if they are steely, then they're just kind of one note steely. They're just hardened. She's still got the soft edge to her because she truly loved this man.
His character, and there's enough mystery left with him that really just gets my goat because sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, just leave him. Just please walk away from this guy. But there's obviously, he's very charismatic. You know, she obviously had a very different idea of their relationship when they went into jail, which really made me mad as well. But I really enjoyed his performance of that because he was a very proud man and different things that happened to him in terms of what goes on in his life and physical attributes and such that happen to him that make it a very big struggle for him, and he really has to learn to adapt as well when he comes out. So, but again, that's kind of in the background a little bit. We only get to, it's kind of like Meek's, was it Meek's Cutoff? I thought it was. We only get to see him when interacting with her, I think.
Through her perspective,
we never get to see him alone for the most part. There's a couple scenes I can think of. It's when they're together. So that's really interesting.
In the gambling parlors and different places. Yeah, even when she just grabs the cigarette out of his hand and takes the smoke and then puts it back in his hand the way she does it. I don't know. There's just so much poetry to the way the characters move and interact with each other.
It really felt like a real couple. I mean, there's great chemistry between these two.
Yeah, at the beginning, they're not even saying a lot. Yeah, exactly. And the way that they
the dancing singing the. Oh, I mean, it's
a really great.
It's a really great film.
And
It
another
is.
one, from 2019, we did, and this, I have to say, as much as I complain about streaming, this is the kind of film we would have probably never got to
seen
see
it.
in Salem
Nope.
otherwise. And so I'm really glad because it was on a ton of top 10 lists, and
Yes.
really glad that we got a chance to see it.
Yep.
So. Okay, so we'll move on to our next film. Speaking of films that were very acclaimed from 2019, this one is Black Mother by Khalik Allah. And this is a filmmaker who's really a photographer by trade who has made a few films over the years. And this one got a lot of acclaim. It's a visual poem that's really kind of an ode to Jamaica and its people, in particular to the women of that country. And what's interesting about this one, when it first started, I thought, wow, it's interesting that he must be using some different filters or things, because this is how dumb I am at the beginning, I thought. And then as it went on, I said, no, I think he must have gone back there over a number of years. And then luckily, I watched this on Criterion, and they had some extras and explained that he actually shot this over many years, including back in the day on film. And then he shot it on video, like actual video, like video cassette in the 80s, and then went on to shoot it, of course, in digital. So there's these different film styles, which I thought worked really well. This is not, I'm really curious to see what you think of this, because this is much more of an experimental type film. It doesn't have a story per se. So as I was watching it, I was thinking, I bet Brian's going to hate this movie.
Oh God!
Did you hate it?
I never said your name out loud. With Angela. Oh, why?
I didn't pick
why
this.
do
You
make
wanted
this
to
story
see
do
it.
No, you give me a list, and I just pick it because I was like, oh, it's short.
It is only about an hour.
Yeah,
it is. It's
about
all visuals.
30
It
minutes too long.
reminds me a little bit of the films of Chris Marker a little bit.
Well, this could, I don't give enough credit sometimes to short films, and I think maybe sometimes films should just be short films. Let me tell you, well, to me, I thought it was a lot of people that were involved in prostitution and priests. That's who the people who were interviewed. That's what it sounded like to me. The ones that stuck out to me anyway.
His grandparents were the ones that stuck out
there
to
was
me.
a
His
few.
grandfather
Really?
was the one that
That's a lot
is
of
the one
different-
that's, and the
So-
dialogue does not match the
Yes,
visuals.
and that bothers me.
Okay.
At some points in time, I do like to be able to see, because when they're
Brian can't handle experimental filmmaking.
Because sometimes when there's a voice, there's some really captivating voices, and then I was seeing something else. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but I really want to see that face with that voice, because that really would really pull you in. Because with the faces that they are showing are fascinating, but when you've got that great voice, I'm like, I need to see a little bit more of that to kind of cling to. Otherwise, we're just kind of randomly going along with the screen that doesn't fit the screen. I don't know what you want to call it, but the frame was at the bottom and it didn't match. And after a while, that drove me nuts. But yeah,
You didn't think it was beautiful?
beautifully shot, yeah. And I thought a lot of them in segments. If I'd had knowing now, if I go back in time and be like, Brian, well, I would tell myself a bunch of other things, but I would say just watch 20 minutes at a time. Just 20 minutes at a time, and you'll really enjoy this series of short little vignettes. And then it would be great. But when you watch them all together, it was like 2 hours.
It was an hour, actually.
Yeah, it felt like 2.
Well, I enjoyed it more than you, but I
Oh, yeah.
kind of went in knowing I knew it was going to be more of an experimental film, so I kind of prepared myself for that. So I was not expecting a story. It's literally shots of life, and the audio doesn't match with the visuals, and that's something you have to get used to. But I thought it was very beautiful, but it's not a 4-star film to me.
No.
It's not something I would want to watch over and over. I'm
No.
glad I saw it, though. Okay,
Yeah.
so we will move on. We're done. Yay!
Yeah, we moved
done.
right along. Yes.
Yeah, we moved along
We
so
moved along
fast.
so good, and we had a bunch of clips as well.
Okay, well, so to recap, 63 up, we both recommend. What are you giving this one, by the
Well,
way?
no,
It's so hard.
there's a
What do you say,
4-star. No, it has
films?
to be a 4-star film. Whether or not it makes my top 10, because it just feels at this point
Well,
in
there's
time
so
that I
many top
enjoy
10
them
films
so
at this
much.
point,
Yeah, and it's hard. How would you not, enjoy
Well, I
the
said,
movie
at this point, if you're
thoroughly?
either bottom of the series or you're not. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, that's why I said it's almost
they're
review proof.
really good. And
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I give 4 stars too. And you give 2 stars?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Watch it and then write into the show and tell us what you think of it. And those of you who are listening on radio, I just mouthed, I'm right. Which is, usually what I mouth in the show anyway.
If you're going to mouth something.
Yeah.
I'll hold my comment on that. For Sama, we both give 4 stars too, so that was a big agreement this
that's
week.
a beautiful
Ashes
film.
of Purest White, I'm also giving 4 stars too. What are you giving it?
Tune into our website and see what I give that, because I'll think about it for the next half hour and I'll let you know,
Okay.
because I'm
And then-
wavering on it.
You're between
I'm leaning
3.5
on it. Yeah,
on 4.
it's like the 3 3/4 star, 3 3/4 stars.
3.75. Yeah. And Black Mother, you can't recommend. I'm going
No.
to recommend. So you're giving it
That's
what, 2
2.
stars for you? Okay.
Yeah, but if you watch at 20-minute intervals,
You know,
it might be.
why is
that
it
would be
whenever
really
we do this
enjoyable.
recap, that's when you're trying to figure out what you're going to give the movie?
Because sometimes I don't think about it at all because I just enjoyed the
But
film.
you
and
know
I
we're
don't like
taping
to-
this show.
Yeah.
It's called Real Film
Well,
Snobs. You all are
it's a
watching
little.
it. Why is he
it's
trying to
awfully
remember on the
judgy.
fly?
And it's also because, 10 years from now, someone goes, "Hey, you gave that movie," and I'm like, "Oh, did I? I don't know. I really
Hey,
love that movie."
we have a star rating, man.
you gave it 3, and I'm like, "That's a 4-star
Come
film." What
prepared.
was I
Do
thinking?
your homework.
Well, there you
Okay.
go.
So, as always, you can find us on our website at realfilmsnobs.com. We're on Twitter and on Facebook, so please follow us there. You can listen to us on KMUZ. You can watch us here on CCTV in Salem, as well as Corvallis Access Media and Scan in Silverton. I'd like to thank my jovial co-host, Brian, and our wonderful sponsors and our terrific crew. As always, thank you. Have a great day and great movies.